Hey friends, and welcome to the premiere and launch of Canuary Junction. If you are new here, my name is Shawn-Marie and I love sharing all things homemaking. That includes cooking, decorating, DIYs, and of course, canning. Canning is one of my all-time favorite ways of preserving food and having this incredibly flavorful, unexpected, amazing delight on my pantry shelves ready to go. That's what I love about canning. I hope you are as excited for this series and more hidden gems to have on your pantry shelves as I am to share them with you all. Together, we'll be making recipes that will impress even the pickiest of eaters and ones that you will love having on your pantry shelves ready to go, loaded with unexpected flavor that you just don't expect to get from a jar. Now, in my quest for the perfect meal in a jar dish to share with you guys on the premiere of Canuary Junction, I came full circle right back to the canning diva Diane Devereaux herself and her recipe for drunken pork stew. I know that might not sound like a whole lot, but let me tell you, it is absolutely loaded with flavor. Now, I have made a couple small batches of this recipe, and I've tested them 2 different times on my family and on friends that we had for just a small casual dinner party. And I have to tell you, they went over fabulously. This is a definite winner, a definite keeper, and one that you definitely want to add to your pantry shelves as well. This is delicious. The way the tomato juice and that red wine create this amazingly deep-bodied base for this entire stew is just incredible. I love cooking with wine. I love the way the taste of the wine transforms and really elevates the dish to the next level. And you don't have to worry about the alcohol content whatsoever. It totally cooks right out, leaving behind nothing but a great flavor profile. Now, if you're opposed to cooking with wine, you can make this recipe and omit the wine and replace it instead with some stock. Your best option is a beef stock or an onion stock. You could even use a vegetable stock. Now, if you do not make your own stocks and keep them handy for dishes such as this, I suggest getting Better Than Bouillon. It is amazing. It has delicious, deep flavor that you wouldn't expect it to have. It is a wonderful alternative to a homemade variety if you don't have it for yourself. And if you're going to go that route, I would actually suggest doing a combination, half and half each of the sauteed onion Better Than Bouillon mixed with some of that roast beef flavor. That would make an absolutely delicious and incredible base for this stew that I think would be totally fabulous in this dish. And the combination of herbs such as nutmeg, cayenne pepper, and oregano just bring this savory twist to the sauce we're making. And the fact that we're going to add a little hint of brown sugar really takes that to the next plateau as well. So you have all of these wonderful flavor combinations that are going to mesh together and process in these jars and just infuse our meat with it. And it is going to be so good. So good. You're gonna love this. You can enjoy this meal straight out of the jar. Trust me, this flavor profile can hold its own and it doesn't need anything to accompany it to get it there. Or you can enjoy it over some buttery egg noodles or some creamy mashed potatoes, which is how we actually like to enjoy it. Either one of those ways is totally delicious. Toss a little side salad with it, and you really have yourself a very spectacular, flavorful meal that takes less than 15 minutes to throw together when you're ready to consume it. Does it get any better than that? Because I really don't think it does. So, without further ado, let's grab our aprons and get this cannonball rolling. See what I did there? Ugh, never mind. I'm a cook, not a comedian. let's get our aprons on. And as always, I want to remind you that I will put the link in the description that will take you over to my blog for the printable version of this recipe to have in your collection. Sound good? Thought so. First things first, let's get our jars going. For this particular recipe, I am actually going to use my wide mouth pints. I am doing this because I have an abundance of empty wide mouth pints that I need to fill with something and get on my shelf. So I'm going to do pints today. Like I always do, I'm going to inspect my jars for any cracks or chips. I'm also going to inspect my lids and rings for any rust, dents, anything. When in doubt, swap it out. Once I know all my equipment is in good standing, I am going to wash it in hot soapy water and rinse it thoroughly. Today's canning recipe is a hot pack recipe. So now that my jars are all cleaned and rinsed, I'm actually going to fill them with hot tap water and let them just sit there with the water in it to keep those jars hot and ready for the hot liquid that we will put inside to can up. First thing I'm going to do is get my saucepan on the stove and heat it up. I'm going to add a little avocado oil to that, and I'm going to take my pork and I'm going to brown it in batches. We are not trying to cook the pork. We are merely trying to get that nice caramelization on all four sides of the cubes. You're going to want your pot to be over a fairly high heat because you want to sear the meat and get that caramelization on it. We're not trying to cook it or steam it. We want this to be very quick. I'm going to do it in batches, and as each batch is done, I'm going to pull it out and put it on some paper towel to drain. It's going to be good. Did you ever notice when you're frying pork like this, everything smells like bacon? I feel like that dog in that Bacon Strips commercial. Like, bacon, bacon, bacon! This makes everything better! It smells so good. Oh, you guys. Smells good. And this is just the pork. We haven't even mixed anything up yet. Smells like bacon in here. I love bacon. See all that down there? That's flavor, and don't worry because we're not leaving that behind. So we are browning our pork, and I've basically just taken some pork roasts that I had, and I sliced them up and diced them into about 1-inch cubes. I trimmed off all the fat, but it doesn't matter what kind of pork you use for this. In fact, when you're canning, you don't need to buy the expensive cuts of meat. Go for the cheaper cuts of meat because those are the ones that are going to cook up and be just as tender as can possibly be. So use what you have, use what you like, use what's on sale. Don't buy the best meats for this. This is just a pork loin roast that I sliced and diced up into 1-inch cubes, and we're just browning it. And that's the best part of canning, is it actually takes a very tough, very cheap cut of meat and turns it into a tender delicacy that just basically flakes apart, and I think that's absolutely fabulous. So don't waste your money on expensive cuts of meat for this. Buy cheap. Alright, the meat is done. Like I said, this was just a very quick caramelizing the outside type process. We are not trying to cook this meat, so we just want to get a little color on it like we did. Now all that in the bottom of the pan, that is all flavor, and don't you worry because we are not going to leave that behind. Oh no, no, no. We'd be fooled to do that. That is total flavor right there. Okay, so to this pan, I am actually going to add some carrots and onions that I diced up, and I left my carrots a little on the thick side, as you can see. I don't like to have totally thin carrots. When I am processing them, I want them to keep their form and try to keep a little bite. So I have some carrots and onions. We're going to put that right in. Get this right in. I am going to add some tomatoes. I diced these up as well, but I kept the pieces fairly large. Again, I want to keep the size and the shape of the tomato. And in here we have some oregano, we have some cayenne, we have some nutmeg, and I have some brown sugar. We're going to get that going in there as well. Some garlic. Stir this up. Turn the heat down. I wish you guys could smell this. The garlic, the nutmeg, you can smell a little bit of that cayenne pepper. The onions are starting to sweat their way through. The aroma is amazing. Oh. So good. Like this is a gorgeous flavor profile with the deep base that we're about to create, as well as having that nutmeg in there. It just creates a flavor that you are not expecting. Now, while all these veggies are doing their thing in this pan, I'm gonna get ready for the next step, which is adding my liquid base. Part of that liquid base requires you to add tomato juice. I don't have tomato juice, but I have a whole lot of tomato soup in my pantry that I need to use up as part of my pantry challenge. So I am going to turn this concentrated tomato soup into tomato juice, and I'm going to do that by using the ratio of 1 to 2. So 1 can soup, 2 cans water, and that's going to make the tomato juice we need for this recipe. Why buy something I can make at home? And I need to use this up, so this has a purpose now. It's creating like its own juices, and it's already deglazed the bottom of this pan, releasing all of those amazing flavors. Like you can totally see all over this spoon. Oh, it smells so good. Yes, this is delicious. You have to see this. Look at all of that yumminess in there. It's creating its own juice. Taking care of those onions. This is delicious. If you could only smell what's cooking in my kitchen right now, you would be totally jealous. You have to make this. It's as easy as that. I insist. Well, this has been going for about 8 minutes. Our onions are definitely translucent, and I don't want to cook it too much. So, to this I'm going to add the tomato juice that I made using my concentrated tomato soup. So it was 1 can of soup, 2 cans of water to that. And for this dish we are going to add a red wine. Now my suggestion is buy the wine you would drink. If you like a sweet red, buy a sweet red. If you like it to be dry and tart, go that route. I like it to be somewhere right in the middle of all that, so my choice is the Bogle Red Zinfandel. We're going to add this right in there. Mix this together. Look at that deep red color. That is gorgeous. And to that we are just going to add a couple of bay leaves. I'm going to turn the heat up a bit. I'm going to bring this to a boil and turn it down, let it simmer for a good 10 minutes. Now, in order to understand the full flavor profile that this dish has, you have to wait for the alcohol to cook out of the wine. Raw wine tastes just like raw wine. However, when you cook it and you remove the alcohol, you transform that into this just deep-bodied, amazing flavor addition to any profile. It richens the dish right up. It is absolutely delicious, and I love using it to cook with. However, again, you don't have to use that. You can replace it with broth, but personally, I think it's just so delicious with the red wine in there. So good. Do you guys cook with wine? Do you like cooking with wine? What is the best dish you have ever made using a wine or liqueur? Drop a comment below and let me know. I would love to hear how you use wines and liqueurs to cook, because they really just add that level of depth you cannot achieve any other way. So good. The broth is done. It's been simmering away for 10 minutes. I am removing the bay leaves from that, and I'm actually going to run the broth through a strainer. I want to separate the vegetables from the liquid because I'm going to try to put even amounts into each of these jars. So we have our jars with water, and we're literally going to dump that out. I'm going to do that with all of my jars. The jars are nice and hot from keeping the water in there. Now we are going to get our meat into each of these jars, and I'm going to do it as evenly as possible using my tongs. I find this to be the easiest way for me to ensure that each jar has equal amounts. Otherwise, I just get frustrated, and I want to make sure that they are all filled aplenty. You know what I mean? Use my tongs. Drop that meat in there. Just got our pot here, a strainer in that, and I am going to run this through. So now we have our broth and we have our vegetables separate. So now I can get the vegetables into the jars. Now we want to leave about 1.5 inches of head space on these. Now that my jars are full, I am going to debubble all of them, and I am going to readjust the liquid back to a 1-inch headspace where needed. These are a little bit low like this one, so I'm just going to add some broth to the ones that needed. I'm going to use my organic cotton cloth. Get it into some vinegar. I want to make sure that you clean the rims really good and get off any fat that might be there. Don't forget to rotate your cloth. You don't want to clean up grease with grease. And get my lids on here. And the lids. Now, do you know why we finger tighten the lids and not crank it down? If you said it is so the air can come out of the inside of the jar, you are correct. If it's too tight on there, the air will not be able to come out of... If it's too tight, the air won't be able to be pushed out of the jar, which is what you need to preserve it. So that's why we always do finger tight. All right, I got 8 pints out of that, and we are going to get them in the canner. Everybody's in the canner. Get our vinegar in there. And let's get this show on the road. All right, so I've got this sitting on the stove. I am going to let the water boil, let it really get up to temperature. Once it does that, I'm going to put my lid on and lock it into place and let it start venting as you know it needs to. Are you all enjoying the kickoff of Canuary Junction so far? Are you getting psyched for this meal and totally ready to add it to your pantry? I know you are. Believe it or not, I actually had surgery number 2 yesterday, fixing my mouth, putting everything back together. So if my mouth seems a little weird, this side's actually a little swollen still and sore. But it's actually coming along quite nicely. I can't wait for it to be over. But I'm grateful I have teeth and I can smile now. Alright, the water is boiling in here, so now I'm just going to take my lid. We're going to get this on, lock it into place, and now we have to let this build up the steam inside. What that's going to do is it pushes the air out, which is what we need to happen in order to be able to pressure can, and you need to see your steady stream of air venting from this spout. Once you see that solid, steady stream, you want to set your timer for 10 minutes. So you're going to let your canner vent for that full 10 minutes, thus ensuring that all of the air is in fact pushed out and it is ready to do its job. We have a nice steady vent of steam coming out, so I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. Now I'm going to add my weight. I am going to let this come up to my PSI, which is the number 11. You have to know your PSI number. It is based on your elevation. If you do not know what that number is, a quick Google search will yield you the answer you are seeking. So once this comes up to 11, I am going to start my timer and process this for 75 minutes. If these were quarts, I would be doing them for 90. But I'm only canning up pints, so 75 minutes. While this is processing, I am going to use this time to write in my canning journal. And a lot of you asked me what types of things do I put in my canning journal. Well, I initially write my recipe out on notebook paper, and then I scribble on that, and I make all kinds of changes, and the recipe is finalized on that scribbled piece of paper. But I won't do that in my canning book. I don't like scribbles and things that aren't neat. So once I have the recipe down packed, I will transfer that over to my canning journal. I'll also include things like the yield, how many I put in, the size. Once it's done processing, I will come back to my canning journal. I'll make a note, was there any siphoning? Did any jars break? Are any seals not sealed that you can detect immediately? I will also come back to my canning journal when I open a jar to consume it. And I'll make notes on taste, how the family liked it, things of that nature. So it's basically anything that I want to remember about this canning episode. I find it is so useful to have this reference to go back to for every single canning dish I have ever made. And it's not just successes that go in here. Failures go in here as well, because that's how I will learn and not repeat them. But I want a record of everything that I do that pertains to canning, good or bad. And that's my reference point when I need it again. So I'm going to make my notes in my canning journal. I'm going to let this come to temperature, and I'll see you guys back here in about 75 minutes. My timer's gone off, so we are done processing. I shut my stove off, and now I am just going to let my canner naturally depressurize. What does that mean? Basically means don't touch it. It'll take anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes, depending on the temperature in your house, for it to completely come down and release all the pressure inside. What you want to see is your gauge on 0. You want to see the valve in the front right there. You want to see that go down. And when you remove your weight, there should be no steam that comes out. Once it is depressurized, we will be able to take our jars out and see what we have. Can I just say, it smells amazing in here. I am so hungry right now. Oh, I just want to eat all of this because I know how good it is. But good things come to those who wait, so we're going to wait for this to naturally depressurize, and I'll see you back here in a little bit. Everything has depressurized. There's no steam. I'm going to unlock this. I'm going to open it away from my face. Oh, I wish you could smell this. Here in the jars, they're already sealing. Look at that. Look at it. Are you hearing it? Oh my Lord. This is so good. I mean, look at that. It's delicious. They are singing the song of my people. So good. My water in the canner is crystal clear, which tells me that there was no siphonage that happened during the processing time. Oh, it smells so good in here. And I'm sure you've heard it going off. My jars are already sealing and pinging nicely. I'm going to leave them for a little bit until I can safely handle them with some pot holders, and I'm going to remove the rings. I do not leave my rings on overnight while I let the jars seal. I take my rings off as soon as possible. You can do it whatever way you want. Your kitchen, your rules. My kitchen, my rules. So I'm going to take these rings off in just a little bit, and I'm still going to let my jars sit out overnight, and tomorrow morning I will check the seals to make sure that they did in fact seal. Anything that didn't seal, I will put directly in my refrigerator, and it can stay there for up to 5 days. Trust me. It won't last that long in there. It'll be gone. But you can refrigerate it for up to 5 days, or you can reprocess them if you choose to do so. We all know how I feel about that. I don't reprocess. I think it just is too much. It breaks down the meats and the vegetables and turns it to mush. It's not for me. So if it doesn't seal, I'll put it in my fridge to use it, but pretty confident they're all sealing because I'm pretty sure they're already sealed. Well, as always, I hope this has inspired you to try this recipe for yourself. Drunken pork stew. It doesn't get any better than this. Now, when you go to serve this, if you want to thicken it up, you can do so at that point. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's good on its own, so it doesn't matter to me if it's thick or not. Thicken that up like a nice gravy, and oh, so good. You cannot go wrong with this recipe, whatever way you choose to serve it, even if that's straight out of the jar. This holds its own in the flavor department. That's for certain. And they will love you for it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. That just helps others find my channel and helps them also enjoy the content that I share with you guys. If you haven't already, I do hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button and joining our little community here. I do make a new video every week, and you never know which one is going to be the next installment of our Canuary Junction. So I would recommend hitting that notification bell so you will never miss an upload when it happens. Thanks so much for joining me in my little vintage kitchen as we kicked off my Canuary Junction series with some drunken pork stew for your pantry shelves. So good. Ugh. Thanks again, guys, and I will see you real soon with episode number 2. Stay tuned. Bye.